Welcome everyone to Lunch with LeAnn. Today is Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. And if this is your first time joining us with Lunch with LeAnn, we are a weekly program that is hosted by Link, a Center for Independent Living in Southwest Idaho. Our guests on Lunch with LeAnn join us every Wednesday to share some fun conversation around lunch, what access and independent living means to them, and most importantly, share about resources that may help you or someone you know in living the life of their choosing. And we do all of this in the first 15 to 20 minutes of your lunch break. Today, we're excited to be starting a brand new series called Education to Action. This series is a part of the Consortiums for Idahoans with Disabilities, also known as SID, Fred Rigger's Disability Awareness Day campaign that has gone virtual this year. During our Education to Action series, we hope to educate you, our viewers, about the governmental process and empower each other to be involved. Link is committed to this because we believe in the future of inclusive politics, where decisions about our communities are made by our communities at all levels. We will be sharing details about all the other exciting events around Fred Rigger's Disability Awareness Day in the days to weeks to come, so stay tuned for that. But without further ado, today we're excited to welcome to our program to kick it off, Mark Leeper with Disability Action Center Northwest. Welcome, Mark. We're stoked to have you here today.
Thanks. I'm stoked to be here.
Great. We would also like to welcome back Sierra, our American Sign Language interpreter. I also want to note that these are available on YouTube on our channel, Link Idaho TV, with captioning after we record them. So, Mark, so happy you're here today. Want to talk about your lunch. What are you having for lunch here, sir?
Well, and it's ahead of time. I'm having an early lunch because, of course, we're in Pacific time. And I am doing a lovely tuna salad with egg sandwich, apple wedges, honey crisp.
Oh, those are my favorite. Honey crisp are my favorite.
And Kalamata olives on top. Can't beat that.
Now, do you always have that much presentation in your sandwiches? That's some sandwich artistry.
I'm working from home. And so that changes a lot. Typical lunch is our office is next door to a Rosar store. So I'll head over there and try to find a salad. And at my age, I'm starting to be conscious of eating a little more healthy. And so, things like kale, cauliflower, broccoli, bring it on. And so that's typical. But I'm kind of spoiled today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I am having a salad, actually. So I'm having a salad, a kale salad, with a new recipe of my shredded chicken. So I put in some new like adobe spices and shredded it for my leftovers. But most importantly, Mark, I want to talk about what I'm having for beverage today. It's water. And this is my Golden Girls cup with my squad goals, but drink your water, viewers, huh?
I've got my water, but it's not right at my table, I'm afraid, in my Golden State Warriors cup. So.
Oh, there you go. I didn't know you were a Golden State Warriors fan. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, the Golden State and, Gonzaga basketball, of course.
Of course. Yeah. So speaking of, you are in Northern Idaho, right, Mark? You are a Center for Independent Living. DAC Northwest is a Center for Independent Living that is up north.
Correct.
Yeah. And so that, we're a Center for Independent Living in Southwest Idaho. And so we're in the, the heart of the capital of Idaho. Here in Boise is one of our wonderful counties in Ada County that we get to work with. But what does that look like in government, now that that's the state? What does that look like for you up in Northern Idaho? And how does the Center for Independent Living get involved in government in Northern Idaho?
Well, it's interesting because, I come from a time, actually, we came from a time before Link existed. And in fact, one of our early staff members became a staff member at Link in its beginnings. And that was really cool because we had that relationship. And I think a lot of times with getting involved, it's a little different now with Zoom, we hope, all to some degree. But it was long distance. And so it really required kind of knowing your local folks at the local level more. And I think we probably spent a little bit more time making connections in that regard. And later we've traveled more to Boise, but budgets were tight back then. And it's just, I mean, with anything, it's things happen at the local level too. And a lot of times the state impact funnels through counties, funnels through cities. And so kind of building upwards and outwards is a kind of what we're used to doing. There's a lot that goes through chambers of commerce and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah. Speaking of building upwards and outwards, you've been a part of this movement for a very long time. And part of the things that myself take for granted that have always been around, like fiscal intermediaries, or, the right to have hire your own personal assistants for your home. All of those things are things that have existed in my world since I've been a part of the independent living movement, but you've seen us before and after. Can you share a little bit of that great history with our viewers?
Well, in-home services is really an interesting area because that was very undefined when I first started. I worked for our former agency that we kind of spun off from back in the early 80s. And there really wasn't anything. We were one of the first ones. We talked to Medicaid in Idaho at that time, and we didn't even know what we were doing. We got a number, I guess. We were a provider. They just kind of allowed us to do that, and we did billing for folks. And so then until such a time, we just thought we were working on behalf of these individual providers. Well, then finally the state said, well, no, we see you as the provider, and those must be your employees. Well, that immediately changed things. But there was no other option. And so then until they actually passed the in-home services in the mid 80s, and we started actually getting agencies to provide in-home services. And then, of course, in the right around 1989 or 1990, it seems to be. Well, actually, no, it was even later than that. We got the self-directed services, and so, but all of that took a lot of coordination, a lot of effort, and we ended up, talking to people, disability advocates in Boise. I always kind of felt sorry for them because they had to spend a lot of time over on Capitol Hill, in the Capitol, talking to folks that we didn't have to do because, we kind of did a quick phone call to a local person, and that was the extent of our conversation. But yeah, so there's been a lot of growth, and now we have a system where people with disabilities are able to hire and supervise their own personal assistants under the developmental disability waiver. There's a full self-direction option for people. And so we've gained so much, and all of that had to happen from disability advocacy and involvement in legislative process. And perhaps the biggest thing we did was the passage of law that makes it illegal, basically, to take disability into account in terms of child placement and all of those issues surrounding parenting. So that was landmark for the nation. And that happened as a result, of course, of advocates in Idaho getting together and convincing some legislators that was an important step.
So yeah, and that's so interesting to watch that process. So it wasn't clean necessarily. Somebody didn't come and say, we have this idea and here's this program, and then it just lined out. There was probably a lot of messy conversations and passions and emotions. And how does one have those conversations productively? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because this is many of our livelihoods.
Well, I suppose one could go on a long time with kind of the divisive nature of things, and it really is different now than it was when we first started out. We were involved in the formation of the first State Independent Living Council, and Kelly Buckland as the first executive director of the State Independent Living Council in Idaho. And during that process, I think we had parents involved. We had people coming from different backgrounds, not necessarily the independent living philosophy, but we were able to kind of have disagreements at times because we saw what's most important is realizing the end result of what we want to see is a pretty common issue. We care about people. We care about equality. We think communities are stronger when every member of the community is involved and has an equal shot. And so when we keep that in mind, the other differences are just process issues. And I think that's always so important. We're human beings, allowing each other to be human is critical. And we're not quite as good at that these days, I think.
That's a really good point. I don't know. I'm really good at letting myself be human, but I have to extend that to others. Is that what you're saying?
It's what a shock, right? But yeah, that's kind of the way it works, and I always kind of make it real big picture. I say there's 7.5 billion of us in this world. At some point, I guess we've got to get along, and that requires allowing each one of us to be human. But in reality, that's how we connect. And citizen legislators are just people. They're people in communities, and connecting, helping them learn, be educated. That's really part of the process. It really boils down to relationships, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when you are communicating and learning about some of these things that are impacting our communities on the local level, on the state level, on the national level, what are some of your go-tos for, I'm looking for information or I'm trying to educate myself? Do you have any special tricks? Do you Google things? What do you do out there?
Yeah, this newfangled stuff called Google and all of that stuff. Yeah, back in the day, it was you go to the blue pages in the phone book, and a lot of folks remember those things, phone books, and you'd search. And I always have the opinion you start calling, and you have a sense of what you want to hear, and if you don't hear what you want to hear, you call somebody else, and you really do kind of go through that process. And eventually, sometimes you'll find you connect with somebody who does have some flexibility and is able to provide a little bit more of what you're hoping you would want to hear. I mean, that's not always the case. Sometimes you get the definitive answer the other way. But I always figure information is power, whether it's the information you want or whether it's the information you have to fight against. It's all necessary. So I've always, again, valued those people connections. You kind of follow through, you take a chance. I tell my new staff that, just be passionate, take a chance, start digging, call people, connect. That's there's no great silver bullet to it all, but I think it really is, again, those human connections, being prepared to dig out information. And we've seen tremendous stuff happen with that. Some of the history, in the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, all of that is just fascinating, because the sense that we have from the outside that everything is very orchestrated and planned and so on and so forth isn't really true. You have last minute stuff that happens, and some of those conversations just require people getting together and connecting and brainstorming and agreeing to disagree at some point so they can kind of move something forward. There's rarely anything that's perfect from the get-go or that carries through that way.
Yeah, just getting messy with it is sometimes part of the joy of the process, right? But then knowing how to move past that messy sometimes, and sometimes you just have to be at peace with a little mess, huh? Is that what I hear?
Well, yeah, no question. It's, we all want exactly what we want, but again, it comes back to that human issue. Sometimes it works. But, the Americans with Disabilities Act is my best example because I'm an ADA nerd from way back. And, we have minimum guidelines, minimum standards of accessibility. Those aren't the Oracle. They don't fit the need for everybody. They're minimum ones. And they were that way because that's what we could get past. We have 12 areas of public accommodations, 12 categories, and we're finding new things now since things are done virtually and online, like Netflix. We never imagined that when the ADA passed. So things change. So now it doesn't necessarily fit. So it ends up a little more messy. And those happened because somebody said, well, what do you mean by what private businesses? And so that was a quick process. That was a quick brainstormed list that, is imperfect.
And so I always encourage people to ask lots of questions, and it sounds like you're encouraging people to build relationships by maybe asking some questions and learning more and doing some investigation.
And being willing to provide those answers sometimes, even when they're a little bit tough. And sometimes being able to say, well, we don't know. Can we put our heads together and see if we can come up with something that meets both of our needs, or at least is acceptable to both of us?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So let's talk a little bit about Disability Action Center. So you guys are up north, yes, and you actually are the hub of all of the centers for, like, we all put our independent living newsletter. You publish that for the Centers for Independent Living, and that comes out once a month. What are some other things happening at DAC that we might be on the lookout for viewers that are up in northern Idaho, or now that most things are virtual, maybe some of us can join?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting time right now, the latter, things being virtual, because we can connect with each other. Disability Action Center has offices, one in Lewiston, one in Moscow, the founding office, if you will, and one up in Post Falls. We also have a project over in Spokane, Washington. And so we kind of connect with each other. We've invested quite a while ago heavily into the, social media, because we felt like young people, the world was kind of going that direction. And I happened to be lucky enough to have somebody we've worked with for a lot of years who had been very involved in setting up eBay businesses and so on. And so she came on and started doing our social media. We have another person who's been a marketing person. The board was very desirous of outreach and marketing, and she loves doing the newsletter. And so we came in, and then that's one of the roles we offered to fulfill. We were getting some funding that was statewide funding, and it allowed us to say, hey, how can we help out with the other CILs in Idaho? And now we have the Spokane Project, which is a youth and young adult. The person that runs that is on the Association of Programs for Rural Independent Living board, has done the youth project there. They're very involved in things. And so they've put together some virtual things, one called Mental Health Mondays, that young people from both sides of the border connect with, because it's virtual. It doesn't matter. We have one person from Olympia, Washington that connects in and talks, and it's just peer connections. People with a disability sharing information, sharing ideas on how to implement and use that information. So that's what we're really pushing. Before the shutdown, we were doing a whole lot of outreach into the most rural parts of Idaho, Clark Fork, which is east of Sandpoint on the Clark Fork River, and so on and so forth. Some of these little pockets that we really hadn't been out to very much before. Of course, now we're a little bit held back from doing that. But, that's outreach has been a big part. And then also trying to figure out how to do things online. We've rolled out a thing called Reality Town, which is a lot of people around the state are familiar with, but have done that virtually, have tested that. And so we're able to connect people to do those sorts of things. So, and we've got some new videos coming out on kind of taking care of your mental health. And so they should be out fairly soon. We've done all the filming on that. And of course, you don't use film anymore, but it's what they still call it.
I
But
also read a lot of books that happen in my ears. So
yeah, exactly. So that's, I think we've gone through a long range planning process. Our board, we've got a good active board. And that's one of the things we really want to look at, connecting with those people in the most rural areas. Internet, access to high-speed internet is an important advocacy issue that we're wanting to connect with people across the state. And in fact, maybe across the Northwest, to say, let's get equal access to people. We shouldn't have to, wait to have young people with a disability or any other young people wait to do their homework because they don't have access to the internet, and schools being held virtually and so on. So we want to do that. We want to connect with seniors that are out in communities that maybe haven't been as connected to the digital world, the electronic world. They've lived in rural Idaho all the time, and there's folks moving in from out of the area who are more kind of plugged in. So we've been doing a lot of that. We're kind of excited about this upcoming year if we'll kind of get this pandemic a little bit under control.
yeah, absolutely. That sounds exciting. And so I would encourage everyone, we'll post your website and your Facebook information up there. So check that out. There's lots of exciting things happening in northern Idaho. And Mark, we are at time. It's surprising that you and I can talk for 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we go on longer than that too. So,
but how can people connect with you or DAC?
Well, the website, www.dacnw.org. You'll find a Facebook page in Moscow, Lewiston, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene area, as well as Spokane, a Spokane youth one. We kick out the newsletter. If you have any interest, anybody has any interest in the newsletter, they just contact Vicky, Vicki, at dacnw.org. That's Disability Action Center Northwest Initials.org, and get you on that list too. So,
It's a
or
great
call somebody at
statewide.
Link. They know where we're at.
We do. We know where you're at. You can message us here. We know how to get a hold of you. I think you and most of your staff are on my quick dial. So, and that's where I think we'll end today. Would just let you know that the Centers for Independent Living in Idaho do work well together. We do encourage you, if you have questions, we share the work and share the information. So if we don't know, we'll reach out to our community, and that is about building relationships, which is exactly what we were talking about today. So Mark, appreciate your time. Thank you for all the work you and the team does up there up north. And we will say ciao for now, and we will see you next week.
The same back at you. Thank you very much. Take care.